we just heard about a few of the products. Some folks might know Trello. If they're more technical, they might know some of the developer tools like Jira. But what's the right way to think about what Atlassian does?
Yeah, so just so I know who's in the audience, hands up if you've heard of Atlassian, used Atlassian products. I hurt you, thank you. For those of you who haven't, www.atlassian.com, go ahead and check it out. So we are in 3 different markets. We are in what we call the Agile and DevOps market. Your software teams, if you have a software team, there is a high probability that they are using many of our products. One of them, our flagship, is Jira. The second market that we're in is IT service management. You can think about service management like a company like ServiceNow. We're in that business. And then the third area is what we call the work management for all. So one of the things that we're seeing with teamwork is that a lot of those practices that were originally learned and developed on the software team are now starting to spin out and be the common practice for like a marketing team or a finance team. So those are the three different markets that Atlassian is. We have a really broad set of products, and we are very much focused on teams. If you look at our stock ticker symbol, it is Teams, just to remind us that that is
very helpful.
Yeah.
And so
exactly.
let's put a bookmark in this question of how what software developers do ends up setting the template for others, because I do think there are a lot of patterns on that. When I first started hearing about Atlassian, one of the things I heard about as somebody interested in work was about the way Atlassian was run. No salespeople, an early commitment to folks having the ability to be remote. And so it'd just be great to hear about, beyond the products, how does Atlassian think of itself as doing things in a different way, and how is Atlassian run?
Yeah, we've been, so I grew up in Silicon Valley from a professional career perspective, so I've worked
You've seen it at a bunch of other big companies.
I've seen it at a lot of big companies, as early at Yahoo, as early at LinkedIn. Atlassian is a very unconventional company in the way that we build our products, the pricing and the packaging, and the way that we run our company. One of the things that I think we've done particularly well is identify waves early on that were going to be these larger shifts, identify them before others have, and then stay true to that. So if you look at our history as a company, you can see a couple of those examples, and I'll just call some of that out since you flagged one of them. The first one was just as the software industry originally 20 years ago shifted from one way of working, which was called waterfall, over to another way, which is agile. It was more nimble. And that would wind up to be like a really great trend to jump on. Some business trends come and go pretty quickly. This thing keeps on giving. As I said, it started with a software team and then it rolled out. So we identified that early and we got onto it. Another one you had mentioned, we don't have a sales team. So the whole concept of the consumerization of the enterprise, where software is, we talk about it being used, then sold, instead of sold and then used. And that's the way that we think about building our products. So they tend to be brought into the enterprise company, not top down, but bottoms up by different teams who are just picking off the shelf that software and saying, hey, that's actually helpful for me to build, to do the work that we're doing. So because of that, we don't really have a sales team. And that's at the time, I know that's more common today, but at that time, having freemium products, doing that bottoms up selling motion, that was something that was very different. So there's, like, you go through our history and there's time and time again where we've done that. So sometimes I ask myself, I've been there for close to 5 years now, like, well, why is that? Like, what's in the water of our company? And I think there's a couple things that have led to that non-conventional thinking. And it probably starts with our founders, who are still, they own the majority of the company, they're still in charge, they're not only great leaders and visionaries, but they were sitting over in Sydney. So they were in Sydney, and they had built...
Things were working different anyway.
Yeah, exactly. The Sydney people are a little bit different. They got funny accents, and they think differently. Fiercely independent people. So it kind of starts with like the culture they grew up in. But I think the part of it was that they were removed from Silicon Valley, and they didn't need to take venture capital money. So that they're, like, let's face it, and I can say this because...
As a VC, I can say congratulations to them.
Yeah, so there's like, you get away from that bubble and that groupthink, and you're doing things independently.
Yeah, I mean, so many companies start out with some atypical way of doing things, but then they compromise on it as they grow. And of course, speaking from a person who is here as part of a founder-led company, having the founder at the helm definitely creates an ability to do that. So you talked about some past waves. It'd be great to hear about the present, because you've led through a pandemic, and in that pandemic, many companies have come to adopt practices that look more like how Atlassian happened to be working before the pandemic. It'd just be great to hear about how you think about the nature of leading in that kind of organization. What exactly does it look like at Atlassian? Where do people work? Et cetera.
Yeah. Well, certainly there's, from the pandemic, there's several trends to potentially touch on. The one that's top of mind, obviously, is this remote or hybrid work versus the classical way of working and showing up in an office. The thing that we're seeing there is, like, you just got to be really crisp and not confused, and lean into the thing that you are going to make. I'm actually surprised at the number of large companies that I see that roll out, make an announcement, like everyone's coming back to the office, only 3 days later to be rescinding that and saying, hey, only kidding.
Sure.
Like, it reminds up that's actually important to many of you who work for us. We've never been confused on that. We've always been a company that had to work in a geographically disparate way. We committed to something that we call Team Anywhere, where we said, look, we're going to be mostly remote, but we're going to maintain our offices. And those offices are going to be reconfigured to be meeting spots. And if you want to hotel, like if you're, you've got a crowded house and you want a place to go, feel free to go use those offices. We own that real estate. And that's working really well for us. 42% of our employee base right now is more than 2 hours away from an office.
Wild.
So yeah, so we've committed to making it work. And the thing is, it's about like staying committed to it and driving and having a vision, for what that's going to.
And my guess is that some of the use of your own products is then designed around that way of work because you're using them on yourselves.
Yeah.
It would be great to hear both for what you hear using it yourselves from your own team, but then also 235,000 customers, obviously plenty of hands came up in this room. What are your customers tell you about how they are working now?
Yeah, well, certainly, a number of our tools in our portfolio are fantastic for that hybrid way of working. There's a few that I would call out. For example, the number of people that I've onboarded in the past 2 years where I've never met them in person is pretty much all of them. So I hired someone, I hadn't met them in person. I had to create a 90-day plan for, okay, what's that first 90 days going to look like? Products like Trello, if you haven't used Trello, it's like a lightweight project management. One of the benefits is that it's great for you as an individual, but it also works really well for your most immediate team. So I put my 90-day plans into Trello for that employee that I'm working with, and I say, okay, Sarah, we're going to work off of that. That's a great product. In the pandemic time, we're all used to using tools like Zoom and Slack, and those tools are great for quick, ephemeral conversation, but then that information gets lost. So you need a tool that's like, what are you going to use for deeper thinking? What are you going to use for the knowledge base of that company so that we can preserve, so when the next new set of employees come on board, that tool is around for.
And
that's Confluence. And that's a tool that our company.
Do we still use the word intranet anymore, or is that like a
no?
We used to use that word in like the 90s.
That's.
So what word do we use for what Confluent is now?
Look, I think it's just the, I would think of it as the knowledge base for your company. It's where team collaboration is going to happen. And the magic of it is that when we see companies who've adopted that wholesale and just say, hey, everyone's going to write that long-form communication in here, all of the major decisions in your company are being driven off of those pages. And what's helpful for those pages is that they have that level of collaboration, and teams can go ahead and build, improve upon ideas because they're open by default. Anyone can see anything.
Yeah, I've heard that line that working from anywhere, it's not so much that it changes the way the organization works, as it reveals the way it has worked, and the more explicit you are, and writing things down goes a long way, the better. Well, here's to learning more about that, Joff. Thank you for joining me for the Atlassian Sponsor Spotlight, sharing the insights with everybody, and to be continued.
Cool.